Welcome to the Self Care Sanctuary, the space where healing begins with honest reflection and gentle action. I'm your host, Sharron Terry, and today we're diving into one of the most difficult decisions many of us will ever have to face. And a lot of times, hopefully, you won't have to, but many of us has. And that is, should I stay or should I leave this relationship? You know, maybe things feel off, maybe you're exhausted from, trying and getting confused, mixed signals from your partner, or feeling lost in a cycle that is just, of hope and then hurt, hope and then hurt, right? If that's you, then I just want to begin by saying that first of all, you're not alone. I've been there and done that. And your questions about whether you should stay or go are valid, Today's episode, what we're going to do is really dive into all about helping you gain some clarity about whether or not that you should go or if you should stay. When I have new couples that come to me, the first thing that I share with them is that the ultimate goal is to be healthy. Is the relationship healthy? Are you healthy? And what can we do to get you to a place of being mutually beneficial? The relationship should benefit you both. Now, don't get me wrong, sometimes, some situations in the relationship is going to feel lopsided. Is not always, 50-50. Sometimes in a relationship it will be, 50 sometimes 50-40, and then the other 10% is just not even there, or 60-40. you know Relationships can be challenging, as we all know. And as I said, we're going to just try to gain some clarity about whether or not you should stay or go. And we're going to be using some evidence-based strategies while centering your emotional well-being and self-care. So take a deep breath. You're in a safe space. And let's just go ahead and start with the foundational question. What makes a relationship healthy? And there's some key components to a healthy relationship. According to the Gottman Institute and other relationship experts who've done thousands and thousands of hours in the lab testing different couples, there's five components, five key components. Number one, we're going to start with respect. Of the utmost importance is both partners value each other, opinion, feelings, and boundaries. Number two is trust. You feel emotionally and physically safe. Open communication is number three. You can express your concerns and your needs without fear of those, whatever it is that you are expressing, to come back and bite you, right? Or that information that you've shared is going to be weaponized against you. Number four is there are some shared values and goals. Even if they're different, you're still moving in the same direction, and you have a commitment to walk this path together, even though you may not agree, or even though you may have differences of opinion, different goals. But at the end of the day, one of those main goals is that we are going to ride this out together. And number five is a mutual effort. Both people contribute to the relationship's well-being. Neither partner is feeling like I'm doing this all by myself. I'm the one making all of the effort. In contrast, an unhealthy relationship might include consistent emotional neglect or criticism, a lot of gaslighting or manipulation. There's a fear of speaking up for yourself. And then again, as I mentioned before, there's also the one-sided effort where one person feels like they're doing 90%, or some cases 100% of putting forth effort while the other is just reaping benefits off of that effort. Of course, unhealthy relationships include physical or emotional abuse. And if this is happening, please prioritize your safety and seek support immediately. And there are some hotlines that you can call, and I'll make sure that I include those in the description of this episode. But I want you to do this. Ask yourself, do I feel emotionally safe in this relationship? Ask yourself, am I free to be myself without judgment or fear? There's nothing like being in a relationship where you have to send your representative in. You can't relax and just be you because you don't know if you're going to be judged or fearing that the real you is going to push this person away. Also, ask yourself, is conflict addressed respectfully, or is it swept under the rug or used as a weapon? Now, these questions are critical because they are foundational in understanding where your relationship stands. Some common signs that it might be time to go. Now, you may want to, pull out some paper, or if you're listening down the road, as you're going down the road, you can always come back and push replay, rewind. But sometimes we stay in relationships way past the expiration date out of guilt, out of fear of the unknown, or maybe it's a thing of we have history, so I don't want to leave this person, and we just keep, or there's a hope that things will get better, things will change. And there are some evidence-based red flags that we have to pay attention to. We can no longer just ignore them. So I want you to think about these. Now, the things or red flags that we have to pay attention to is that you've had the same fight over and over and over again without any resolution at all. So, according to Dr. John Gottman, it's not conflict that breaks couples up, it's the unresolved conflict that becomes toxic. So, if you're fighting about the same thing, nobody's listening. Nobody is even interested in a resolution. You're just fighting to be fighting, you know, just refusing to let go of it or work through it so that you can move forward. Another red flag is that you feel more lonely in the relationship than you would being alone. You find yourself laying next to him or her, and you feel like even though that person is right next to you, or maybe they're watching TV in the same room with you, but you feel alone. You don't feel connected to this person at all. That is a red flag. If you find yourself sacrificing your identity, another red flag. If you look in the mirror and you have no idea who you are, if you've lost touch with yourself, with your values, your passions, your self-esteem, something is off. if if I were to say to you, what do you like? What do you want? And if the answer is I don't know, or it's what that other person wants, what that other person likes, that's a red flag. Okay. Now, another is you're doing all the emotional labor. Relationships, as I said, are not 50-50 every day, but they should balance itself out over time. So let's just say, my partner and I'm feeling down and I don't have a lot of energy, or maybe I just don't have the capacity to, deal with something that's coming up in the relationship. And my capacity may be at 30%, and maybe his is at 70%. And during this phase or during with this particular issue, maybe his 70% can help us get through it until I can gradually build myself up, or he encourages me to meet him at that 50-50 mark, or at least he can meet me where I am, and help me work through whatever it is that I'm going through in the relationship, because he's going to do that by listening to me. He's going to do that by showing up for me. And, those are the things to let you know that this person is also vested in the relationship. Now, if you've expressed your needs clearly and they're consistently unmet, then as one psychologist, Lindsay Gibson, noted, that's chronic emotional neglect. And it's subtle, but it's a form of harm, right? Because you're constantly being reduced, constantly being sent a message that you don't matter. And we can't, even though I am a proponent of self validation, when you're in a relationship with someone, there should be a mutual validation or a mutual reassurance of where you stand in the relationship. So, now with all of that being said, let's go ahead and talk about when to consider staying. Because, quite frankly, leaving isn't always the answer. And here's some signs that the relationship might still be worth working on. Now, let's say both partners are acknowledging issues and they're willing to grow. That is a sign that the relationship is worth working on. Both people are, taking ownership of their contribution to whatever the issues are. Another sign that the relationship is worth working on is that you share core values and you still enjoy each other's company. I have had couples that will come in and they're really, struggling, but their foundation is based on a friendship. They still love each other, they still trust and respect each other, but maybe there's just cracks in the foundation. Like, I don't know how to communicate with him or her, or I don't know how I'm supposed to support him or her at this stage or phase in their lives. If there's no emotional safety, and no abuse, if there is emotional safety and no abuse, then that is something that you can work with, right? But if you're being abused and you're not emotionally safe, that's something else. Um, you've taken space. If you've taken some space to reflect and notice you want to reconnect, not just out of habit or fear, that's a sign, right? So if you go to bed and you are laying there and you're thinking, do I really want to be with this person? You may actually have to make a pros and a cons list, make the benefits and, of everything, right? Has there been more good times than bad times? If the bad times are there, were we able to work through them in the past? Or is this bad thing, somebody that's maybe being abusive, but then they're nice, then they're abusive again? That is not safe. Um, so you want to ask your partner this, just try it. Are we both willing to show up for this relationship in new ways? And if the answer is yes, and followed by actions, then it may be worth doing the work, possibly with a therapist, such as myself. A therapist is not necessarily going to tell you whether you should stay or not. But as I always give the disclaimer, as I mentioned before, is that when you sit down before a therapist, what you're going to get is um, ways to communicate more clearly with each other. You're going to be able to determine whether or not, get some clarity about whether or not it's better for me to stay or go. And because the ultimate goal, as I said, is to be healthy. Now, here's three parts, right? To decide whether or not you are going to be able to work through things, right? Am I working with something, that is worth my while? So the first thing you want to do is ask yourself or ask the question to clarify your values, right? What do I need to feel loved and secure? You would be so surprised at how many people don't know. They really don't know because they've never taken the time out to really consider themselves and what they need. And then ask yourself, is this relationship helping or hindering my growth? Another part of clarifying your values is assessing the patterns, not the promises. So look at what your partner does, not just what they say. Because as you and I both know, actions definitely speak louder than words. People can say all day, I'll change for years, but real transformation has to be visible. Don't just have talkamony. You have to be about it. The person has to be about it, right? Also, try the 3 C's for check in, which is consistency, right? Are the efforts to change consistent or are they temporary? So, in other words, you may throw out there, I'm leaving if you don't do this, this, and that. But the person only changes long enough to get you to do what they want you to do or to try to get back into, their good graces. And then once they are back in there like swimwear, it's, it's back to the races again, doing the same things, repeating the same patterns. Check for communication. Do we talk with each other or are we just talking at each other? Can you see a difference in the way that people or your partner is communicating with you? Are they listening for an understanding instead of a response? Um, and then the third C is compatibility. Simply put, do we want the same thing out of life? Do we want the same kind of life? So again, it's consistency, communication, and compatibility. That's a really, quick check-in to get you on the path of discovering is this relationship what I really want, or is it what I really need? So, just as a journaling prompt, write down how you feel before, during, and after the interactions with your partner. And this pattern often tells you more than words could ever tell you. And this is something that I oftentimes tell not just couples trying to decide whether they should stay together or not, but also with just your relationships in general. Listen, listen, listen to what your body is telling you. Where do you feel elated? Are you happy? Or are you feeling more drained? Like, does your stomach hurt? Does your head hurt? Are you feeling tightness in your chest when you leave this person's presence? Do you feel worse about yourself or do you feel better? Again, these patterns can tell you and give you clues about what you should do. And I'll guarantee you 9 times out of 10, your gut has already told you what you need to do, but you may be resisting against it. So do a gut check. Now, let's talk about how self-care plays the role of it, how it plays out in these situations. Because making a big decision, a big relationship decision while you're burnt out, while you're anxious or self-abandoning, meaning that you have not cared for yourself in any way at all, not rested, is really nearly impossible because you are making decisions out of emotion. So that's why self care isn't selfish, it's strategic, right? So here's what self care looks like during this process: resting. I know for some people that's a bad word, but it's not. You have to rest so that you can think clearly. You know, when you're tired, you become agitated and it's really hard to make a sound decision. I mean, it's hard to decide what you want to eat for dinner when you're tired and frustrated, let alone what you should do about your relationship. And then sometimes you may make a decision that it's over, but that's not what you really want. You just don't have the capacity in that moment to really work through the relationship because you're so tired. The other thing is boundaries. Limit conversations that escalate or confuse. Now, when I talk about boundaries, boundaries are not meant to isolate you, or they're not meant to send you into seclusion. Boundaries help people understand how you need to be treated, and it's for your safety. Because we are all going to be in hard situations sometimes, but you have the ability to work through them with the boundaries. Also, um, getting support during these times, having someone that you can really trust, someone who is there to listen, not pass judgment, not give you their opinions about what they would do because they don't know what they would do if they were you. Even if they were in similar situations, it's never the same because you're two different people. Talk to a therapist. A therapist, again, can help you gain clarity about who you are and your needs and your wants in any given situation. And then, you want to, again, reconnect with yourself, return to hobbies, routines, and your passions that ground you. So your tuition oftentimes will whisper to you in your mind, and it's when it's not so noisy. And to hear that inner voice, you have to take time out to pause, to really listen, because a lot of times when there's a lot of noise in your head or you're hearing a lot of voices, you become confused and you don't really know what to do. So in situations like these, it becomes important to really calm yourself and think about what it is that you need and what it is that that still quiet voice is sharing with you. Um, so only you can make the choice. But remember that staying is a choice and leaving is a choice. Neither option will make you a failure. What matters is alignment with your truth, not anyone's expectations, not anyone else's, standards, but what is true to you. Like William Shakespeare says, to thine own self be true. Because guess what? You are going to live with you for the rest of your life. People come and go, but you will follow you everywhere. So it's a good idea to figure out who you are, what you want, and what you need. So if you choose to stay, let it be because there's still love, because there's still respect and a mutual willingness. If you choose to go, let it be with compassion and dignity, both yourself and your partner. And if you're not sure, that's okay too. Sit with that uncertainty. Give yourself grace until you are sure. Don't make any, sudden moves until you feel a sense of calm and peace within your spirit. Okay. Making decisions as far as relationships go, even if you stayed and you've decided now is the time for you to go. I had someone, not just one person, but many people have said, I've been with this person 20 years and I've wasted my time and my young years. And I just like to offer to you that nothing is ever wasted, right? God can use all of it, the good, the bad, the indifferent, because whatever happened, if it didn't happen for you, it happened for someone else. And these are lessons that we can pass on to other people who may be experiencing the same things. You may be able to offer hope and understanding and compassion to someone else who may be going through that very same thing. So before we close out, I just want to, offer you this question. So maybe the next time you're journaling or just pondering, what does a fulfilling relationship look and feel like to me? Right? If you had your perfect relationship, what would that look like for you? And then I want you to practice one act of self care every day, whether it's to rest, whether it's just to listen to music. You may need to set a boundary, or maybe you need to just try something new, something that you've always wanted to do. Now is the time to do that, because maybe it's just not that you need to really leave the relationship. Maybe it's just that you need to reconnect with yourself. um, you know, you may like different things and you may want to try, different places, different foods. These are all things to consider. And remember that you do deserve relationships where your soul can rest, where you can grow and, feel safe and, thrive. Not just survive, but actually thrive in your relationship. Now, until as we close out and until the next time, remember that self care is not an option, it's necessary. And when you learn to love yourself, it really doesn't matter who doesn't. Take care and thank you so much for joining the Self Care Sanctuary podcast.